Hey guys, welcome to the drawing stream. I'm so glad you're here. If you're brand new to this channel, if you would hit the subscribe button if you're over on YouTube, that would be awesome. If you're on Facebook, then just know that we go live on Monday mornings at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I appreciate you joining and hope you come back. If you're a regular, then I would appreciate if you could let me know if you can hear me okay. Hey, Linda. Good to see you out there on YouTube Live. So I'm guessing you can hear me if you responded. So very cool. All right. Thank you. Appreciate the sound check. Okay. We are going to go ahead and dive right in and get started this morning. So I'm trying to... I think I've got all my pencils laid out here that I've been using the last few times that we were working on this portrait. And I'm going to make my chat window just a little bit smaller. There we go. Okay. All right. Hey, Shiny is joining us as well over there on YouTube Live. How are you? Glad you could join us. Okay, so last time we were working mostly on this eye over here. And then I figured it was probably 2 a.m. Shiny, where you are. We were working on this eye, and we added some color in there. Not a lot, just a little bit. So we didn't touch the iris yet. So we're going to do that. But before I do that, I want to move over to this eye and put some color over there first before we move up to the iris. Before I do that, I'm going to fill in a little bit more of the pupil right there. And I'm not going to have that much of the pupil showing right here. Or that much of the highlight, rather. I'm not going to have a whole lot of it showing. Okay, depending on how far we get, I suspect that today we might start entering into the ugly stage of the drawing. Okay, so let me minimize this side then. If I did the other side, I want to make sure I do the same thing for both sides. I'm going to move my mic down to make sure you guys can hear me okay. All right. You know, having the little highlight in the eye, sometimes called a flucolight or a reflection, is not absolutely necessary. Sometimes you get the impression that you have to have that, but in fact, you don't have to have it. So it's something that you can do as an optional item. So just keep that in mind. Hey, Harry, how are you? Good to see you over there on Facebook Live. And thanks for joining us. The Windy Scotland, huh? All right. And Shiny, that's great. You got your iPad back. That's awesome. All right. I'm going to come in here with my Merlot, and I want to darken up some of this over on this outer corner. This is where it's the darkest. This whole area is actually really dark over here. But if I can start over on this corner of the eye, since I'm going to just focus on the eyes right now and make it darker over here, then I'm going to be able to have the tonal range that I need to begin working on the rest of the face as well when I get to that part. Okay, I'm going to add that in here. Make it just a little bit darker right in here. And then this whole area up above the eye, above that eyelash line, right there, right before the upper crease. And then this whole area over here will be a pretty static value, be the same value over here. But I don't have time at the moment to put that value over there. So I'm going to start that value a little bit, and then I know that I'll be able to come back to it later on. So I've started it and connected it just a little bit to the eye, which is giving that eye some context. But this whole area is going to be this whole darker value right here. So this should give me a starting point and suggest to me what that value is going to be. Okay, so let me go back up here. I want to look at the shadow shapes. You can see from the reference, hopefully. I know I've cut it off a little bit right there just to be able to get enough of that reference up there. Let me switch pencils here so you can see what we're doing. I want to put more of this value up here, but I want to think about the contour. It's going to be very, very dark over here on this edge. But I'm thinking about the contour of that upper eyelid. Now that'll affect this value just a little bit. And then as I work my way down, I'm going to increase this value where that upper fold is as it comes over here to the outer corner. There we go. Okay. Let's see what that's looking like. Okay. Now I want to push some of this dark value over here, away from this dark recessed area. If we think about the contour of where everything is in this part of the anatomy, then this is very concaved and this area. So both corners of the eye, very concaved areas are represented there. And as I move towards the middle portion of the eye, then typically this is sticking out more. But what happens is that I've got light coming from this direction. So I have to make an allowance for that. So it's going to be lighter right here then instead of right in the middle. Hey, Jan, how are you? And Philomena Pass, how are you? Oh, thank you so much, Philomena. Appreciate it. Thanks for joining us. Okay, so what I was saying though is that, I want to make sure I stay focused where the light, and I make sure I remember where that light direction is. And I made a mark with my pencil accidentally right here across the nose as I was pointing. So hopefully we can get rid of that. Hey, Deborah, how are you? Thanks for joining us. Okay. Can we get rid of it? Yeah, I think we can. Okay. Now, used to early on in the when I was first learning, that little mark would have driven me insane, would have driven me crazy, and I would have thought, "Oh no, this is the end. I got to start over." Now I know that with multiple layers on top of that, it's nothing to worry about. I can get rid of it later on. Okay. We'll come back in here. There we go. Lighten up some of this. There we go. All right. Now, if I'm making that dark, then I can darken up some of this if this starts to get dark enough, you know. But I don't want to leave this area out because this area is darker or just as dark as that area. So I want to make sure that I don't leave this part out. Now, one thing I love about these luminance pencils, or I'm sorry, these Lightfast pencils, is that it's going to adhere to the surface. This pencil, probably better than just about any other pencil, will adhere to the surface when I can't get any other pencil to do that. So I just need to remember that I try to think about that. If I'm having trouble in an area, if I've built up a lot of layers, or if there's just something about the surface in that spot for a moment, and I'm trying to get another pencil layer down, then the Derwent Lightfast will work. Okay. Now, I think I'll leave it right there. And I don't have to worry too much about going all the way down here, although this area right here is going to be darker than just about any other area, because this little spot right here next to the ala is sticking out farther right here. The ala is at the edge of the nostril. And so typically when you look at a nose, you're going to have a dark, dark area right there. So, hey, Pam Gates joining us over on Facebook. How are you? Good to see you out here. Okay, let's go back up. I think I'm missing some drama here. What was going on? Shiny, you lost your keys or something? I'm so sorry. That does not sound fun. Okay, come back down. Okay, that's probably, for the moment, enough of a darker value in there to where now I can say, okay, I've got a little bit of a darker value there, darker value here. I'm slightly darker in value than I was over here now, because this needs to be darker. All right, so now I can come back over here, put some of the same colors that I did on the right eye over here on the left. So I'm just using a very light touch, and I want to keep on rotating, shifting the tip of that pencil and not keeping it just in one little edge of where, that pencil is striking the paper. Because those little flakes of this substrate, the pencil, the pigment itself, coming off of here, everything that makes up this pencil, it's going to adhere to that paper easier if I keep rotating it and moving it around. I don't just keep it in one position, one spot. It'll start to get like a little bit of a slick surface on one of those little micro edges I'm talking about. And, if I don't keep moving it around. So if I keep moving it, it will adhere to the paper much easier than if I just leave it in one spot. This is also the reason why I want to change my position once in a while and move my arm, move my wrist in a different position sometimes, instead of striking the paper in the same spot each time. Offers me another advantage too. It will allow me to not create some kind of pattern in that area. It'll make it look more random, which is what we want. Because then we can cover the entire surface and have a smoother look to our work. Which by the time we're done, that's what we want, or that's what I want. So, hey Karen, how are you? Karen's over on Facebook Live. Good morning. I say good morning, and it is, I know, for a lot of you, and it is for me. It's a little after 10, but for Deborah and I, we we're very early risers. So we've been out here for, we've been up for a long time. I've only been out here for about 20 minutes now. But yeah. Hey, Judy, how are you? Thanks for joining. Okay, let's see if I can turn that other camera on. Sometimes it might help if you see this from a different angle when we're working on it. Oh, I see I don't have the color calibration on that. So, so Shiny, you're asking about pan pastels. Yeah, actually, yeah, I've used pan pastels quite often. So, yep. Okay. Let's switch over. Well, hey, Lori Dixon's joining us as well at 7:20. Oh my goodness. Now that is early. That's early. And Karen, you just lost us on Facebook. Oh, okay. Well, see, I'm glad we're streaming on more than one platform then. Makes it so much better. Let me sharpen this. Okay. Yeah, so Shiny, to answer your question, yes, I like pan pastel. I don't use it all the time. Sometimes I want, I use it once in a while. In the 2 eye study that I did recently, inside Face Value, I'm using pan pastel as an underpainting in there. Okay. I don't like that particular camera angle because I forgot to calibrate the color over there. So it makes it look very muted. Very washed out. Okay, I think we're going to go back up there to. It's hard for me to get out of this area because I want to smooth out what we're working on, but I'm going to leave it for a moment and we're going to go back up here to the iris, and I'm going to go ahead and start adding some color up there. Now, primarily, her eyes are a little different, but she's got primarily green eyes or hazel eyes. They have a little bit of a grayish or blue kind of tint to them as well. So they're in that hazel category. Um, so I'm going to use my dark indigo, and I'm also going to pull out some green pencils to use in there. And I've got Olive Earth, and I'm going to use my Light Flash 10% by Luminance. So Olive Earth is a Derwent Lightfast pencil. And of course, Polychromos Dark Indigo is Polychromos. That's such a great pencil to use. So I'm going to start with that one. That one is more of our value separation and range. So think about where all the dark values are. So I'm going to start on that outer edge, a little ring that we see on the outer edge of the iris. I'll start over there and work my way down. So use tracking is typically what I'll do. That is restating lines by going over them multiple times up here towards the top. Why? Because the top up here is always going to be darker. Nearly always is going to be darker than the bottom or anywhere else on the iris. And then as I work my way down, I'm going to lighten the pressure of my stroke. And then at the very bottom, I'm going to use very, very light strokes. Same way over here. This is going to be more of a solid value and color over on this right-hand side. The reason for that is because I've got less transparency being shown over here because there's light hitting directly in this spot. So that enables this invisible layer of the cornea to refract the light and let it disperse over here. So on this side. So I have to remember that when I'm starting to color this area and draw this in. So I'm going to have more of a solid color right over here, and then it will lighten up as it gets over to that left-hand side. Because there's a diagonal that we think about whenever we consider where the light is hitting the iris, or really hitting the cornea. Okay, I'll make it dark, really dark right up here, right next to that highlight. Make this more solid, and then lighten it up as I get closer to that other side. Okay, there we go. Now I want to make sure that that pupil didn't move on me. Make sure it's still there, and it appears to be round and in the center. Very important. Okay, close enough for the moment. So let me move over here and do the same thing. Now over on this side, the right side, I can't see as much detail because it's such a dark value over here. So I can go ahead and use this dark indigo to darken up that value, because everything over here is going to be extremely dark. So I don't want there to be a whole lot of distinct differences between some of the edges and corners and details. I want them to be more blurred, more of a the same value. And I can do that by using a dark value and coloring that in, drawing all that in. So my darkest value is going to be on top again. And then I'm moving my way down and lightening up my pressure on my pencil as I move my way down. Now in this case, the light is hitting over here, so this is going to be more of my static value over here. It'll still get a little bit lighter as I move down away from that highlight. But I'm going to let more light be shown right over here than up here. Not a lot, just a little tiny bit, just so that I can stay true to the properties of light and how the light would actually be working in this area. Okay. Fill some of that in right there. Make sure this pupil is the same size as the other one. It really helps me if I look at my screen to see what that thumbnail image size is. Kind of condenses everything for me. Makes it where I can just look at it and only think about shape and value. May have gotten that one a little bit large, actually, the more I look at it. So I can take a little bit of that off. And then we'll fill more of that in with color in a moment. Okay. Make this a little bit darker right here so that this can be slightly lighter. I'm going to fill in this outer ring, make it darker. Okay, make sure I go all the way back up there to the top. Make that darker up there, and then move my way down. All right. This could stand to be slightly darker. Now I can add my 10% light flesh 10%. So I want to look for the lighter areas and add that. And I'm pressing a little bit hard just so I can get this to adhere. It may look a little weird at the moment when we do that. That's okay. All right. And now I'll add my Olive Earth, my Derwent Lightfast. Sharpen that up just a little bit more. Okay, so I can start at the top and work my way down. And I want to think of this sort of like spokes on a bicycle. And just move my pencil back and forth between the outer edge of the iris and towards the pupil. Whoops, I just broke that tip. Sometimes that happens. So I still have an edge on there, so I can just keep going. And just keep looking at it, making sure that I keep it dark over in the area it's supposed to be dark. I can tell we probably want to darken up that pupil even more. I want to come over here, do the same thing. I'm pressing just a little bit harder over here than I was on the right eye or the right side. Okay. Now I want to grab, I'm going to get a darker value in there. Look for my either my dark blue, let me see here. Grab this dark flesh. That could be enough of a contrast right there. And just make that a little bit darker at the moment. So I want that pupil to appear to be black. Now remember that colors and values are all relative. They're very, very relative. So it's fine if I wanted to use black in this area, but then I've got a relative black that I'm using everywhere. And so the tonal structure then would change. And that's fine. But I just have to remember that. I can't go in other areas that are that dark and not use black. Most of the time, I want to keep that consistent and keep using black then. I'm not using black right now, but that's my point is, as long as those layers combined in the pupil and this layer on top represents my darkest value for the time being at least, then that's what I want to keep consistent throughout the entire drawing when I look for my darkest values and I depict those. Okay. Now, let's see here. So I can come back in here, if I wanted to, with my light flesh again, and I could say, let's, lighten up some of these areas right in there if that starts to make sense, if I wanted to do that. It's not something I'm going to focus on a whole lot right now, though. That's something that could come later. But we've got that dark value now established. And actually, this side would probably be the side I would lighten up just a little bit more. I think that probably makes a little more sense right there. And then this ring could come back this way just a little bit. There we go. Okay. Push that back in there. There we go. Oh, hey, Oksana, how are you? Good to see you out here. All right. Now, I'm going to go back to my darker range over here and push this back in. Oh, thank you, Oksana. Appreciate it. And you know what happened is suddenly using, these darker colors, now this area doesn't look as dark, especially when we use that dark indigo over here in the eyes. So as we darken all of those areas up, then we'll want to come back in there with our darkest value. I can't use this Merlot to get it as dark as what I did right there using my dark indigo. If I go over this now, this entire area with dark indigo, it will darken that entire area up, right? So, and that's what we want to do. We want to build up those layers little by little, here a little, there a little, just moving around and start pushing them with each layer darker and darker, not all at one time. Okay, I'll come back in here on top of that area with my Merlot on top of that dark indigo. All right. Take a look at it over here. All right. Let's see here. So I'm going to add a little bit more here. I want to get that shading from the top down. I want that to be more pronounced and more apparent as I look at it. Over here as well, can be shaded just a little bit in that area into the sclera. Okay. Now I'll come back in here with just a little bit of the dark indigo right up here on top. And I'm going to pull out my red. I'm going to use that right in here next to the tear duct. There we go. I'm going to keep using this red a little bit more since I've used it already in one area. I can keep adding it to some of these other areas just to make this just a little more warm than what it is right now. fade that out into the skin over here. Right here at the edge of where the highlight starts to hit that high part of the cheek over here. Okay. Now, as this turns, it will become a little darker. I want to put some of that dark value over here. This is Merlot in Derwent Lightfast. A little more in this cheek area. I won't sit here and bore you to death, though, with drawing the entire cheek for the next hour. I'm sure you all have been there, where that's what you're doing. And if you haven't been there yet, and you're interested in portraits and you're drawing portraits, then you will. It'll happen, where you're going to spend a few hours drawing on a cheek. And it's hard to stay focused when that's what you're working on, because it can become monotonous and boring. At the same time, you do have to stay focused, or you'll lose your train of thought and your attention and focus on what you're trying to achieve in that area. Move my arm just a little bit. And then keep moving this towards that highlight. I think I need to sharpen this because it's not adhering like it should be. Shiny says, I would like to see a large layer done with the layers. I find that more interesting to learn from than more detailed bits. I hear you, Shiny. Thing is, it does get a little monotonous, and all you're really doing is you're remaining consistent throughout the entire layering process. And you just keep moving the pencil over that entire area to get that layer down. Yeah, I figured that's what you meant. Shiny was like the cheek. Yeah, it's a good approach, Pam. Moving from area to area, different areas of the drawing, so that you don't get bored with an area. That's for sure. That works really well. Okay, I'm gonna zoom in just a little bit. I'm gonna move up to the top of the eye here. And let's see here. So this, use a base layer of this Herculaneum red right here. And after I get this base layer down, then we'll darken that area up. Oh, I thought I was going to sharpen that. I forgot. There we go. If I use this Herculaneum red right here at the edge of this shadow, then I can start to blend and create a softer transition right here at the edge of the shadow. Which is nice because that's ultimately what we want. Is we want a softer edge on that cast shadow. Every cast shadow doesn't. I'm switching to a new pencil of the same color, but every cast shadow doesn't need to be harsh. Doesn't need to have a harsh outline. And for me, I like a softer cast shadow because it is more interesting than a hard, very harsh line creating a cast shadow. Now, we know that, cast shadows, the shadow edge in particular, loses its intensity the farther away it is from its source. And so it becomes more fuzzy, it becomes less distinct. But it's always just something to keep in mind that you want some interest in in your shadows, and you don't want them to be just very harsh all the time. So the way to achieve that is to give that a lot of thought and take a lot of time in that area and create something that's soft by taking the time to build, darker and then lighter mid-range values and then overlap. Keep going back and forth over and over again in that area, light and dark values. It's not going to be just, hitting it one time and you're done. Okay, where is my Merlot? There it is. All right. So I'm going to come back in here now. I guess I'll start up here. So I probably ought to establish a little bit again where this top edge is for the eyebrow. Because we'll lose it if we're not careful. Suggest just a little bit about where those eyebrow hairs are. And then that bottom edge. And now I can work on this shadow right here. I can use a softer pressure to the point of the tip of the pencil, as I'm going now over the top of that Herculaneum red. I have to resist the urge to start scribbling real fast. That's something that would just destroy some of the subtlety that I have in here. I'm going to sharpen this up again. I've got two of these pencils somewhere. Here it is. Sometimes I'll lose that second pencil. If I've got 3 or 4 pencils in my left hand, though, usually that's where it is. And I forget I'm holding it. If you guys haven't had a chance to listen to today's podcast, I would highly recommend it. Did an interview with Catherine Hanson. And if you're not familiar with her art, I think you'll really love looking at the art that she does. It's wildlife and nature subject matter. It's just very, very good art. And it's a fun interview. She laughs a lot. That always makes it fun, right? She did such a great job. Okay, now right in here, we've got a darker area right there. And that makes sense. So I want to make sure I depict that area as being dark all the way over to this edge right here. Move this back up. Okay. Come back over with switch pencils again. My sharper pencil. And I want to work my way down, but I want to work my way down slowly. There we go. Okay. Now this shadow is a little tricky because it's darker right up here. My understanding of it, looking at it, my perception is it's darker right there. And then it comes down here. It gets darker right here, obviously. But I want to make sure that it, this is one of the things that I always try to remember on the side plane of the nose, that it typically the shadow is less intense right here in that middle area. Okay, the value starts to become less dark right there. And then as I get, so it's dark up here and dark down here. So as I start moving my way down, then I'm going to increase the intensity of that dark shadow as I get close to this corner, because that's where we're headed. And it's very dark at that corner right there. So I don't want it to be the same value all the way down here. So I'm going to keep thinking about that as I work my way down. Come back up, hit that from a different angle, very, very, very light touch. And then move my way down again. There we go. Oh, good to hear, Shiny. Glad you're enjoying them. Awesome. Work my way down again. Very light pressure as I work my way down, because I want that to be even and a very even distribution. It's not ever going to be real even at this moment, but as even as I can get it is what I want to do. Oh, no problem, Colleen. Thanks for coming out here. Enjoyed it. Thanks for joining us. I'm just glad you're able to hang out anytime at all. That's awesome. Okay, we'll come back up. The darkest side of that shadow, or the darkest area, I guess I should say, is, it kind of travels and it moves its way from right in here and then down here. So it kind of goes up and then back down. And so, what would make it do that? That's a question I usually want to ask myself. Why would it do that? It's usually because the darkest area is the most recessed spot, you know. So if I keep that in my head, I keep thinking about that, then it will help me to depict it. Oh, very cool, Colleen. Yeah, thank you. You have a good night then as well. Okay. I want to make this darker down here. And it's not going to get dark enough when we consider that we used dark indigo up here. So I have to keep that in mind that we're going to have to use that dark indigo down here if we want this to remain in balance and have a consistent tonal structure that we're working with. Okay, let's take a look. Let me zoom back out. Okay. I'm going to come back over here for just a moment. Now that we built up some of the darkest values over there, I can spread out a little bit of this dark value here. One thing you have to remember with Derwent Lightfast is this pencil line, it will clump a little bit, so it will disperse some of the pigment, um, and a little much in some areas. So using a very light, consistent um, pressure and touch is very helpful. And then the other thing I like to do with it is I like to go over it with a polychromos pencil, and it will just smooth that area out, and it will give you just this radiance and glow in your skin tone. And for the longest time, I didn't know that. And so once I learned that, it really has just changed things a lot, and it gives you just this nice, rich, um, layered kind of glow to the skin. Um, so I really like that combination of going back over it, and it doesn't have to be polychromos. Sometimes, depending on the layering that you're doing and what all you've got down in that area, sometimes a good hard luminance pencil will do that job as well. So that's just something I started doing relatively recently and started understanding, and now I try to incorporate that just about every time because it can start to look, I mean, especially when you're seeing it zoomed in here, it starts to look very clumped or grainy. Some people like that term. And you just kind of have to be okay with that look for a while if you want that effect of creating that just very glowing kind of skin tone later on, you know. Especially with this Stonehenge paper. But I mean, the same is true with even pastel mat or many other papers as well. That you've got, you've got this area in the layering process where it starts to look um, just very grainy, and you can see a lot of the paper underneath it. And as long as you're consistent and you're patient with yourself and you're okay with having it look like that for a while, some people they don't like it. They just want to get rid of that look right away. But if you can live with it for a while and then you keep layering and building that up slowly and consistently, the consistency I think in the application layer is probably more important than anything. Then when you put that polychromos pencil on top or some other harder lead on top and you what I call brush it, you're just spreading out, smoothing out, blending the layers underneath, then it'll have just such a nice look to it, in my opinion. Okay. Take a look at it here on the screen. All right. Okay. Not every luminance pencil is created equal, though. And some of those luminance, like the one I was just using, the violet pink, um, it's a very, very soft lead. Some of the luminance pencils, though, are not as soft as the others. And so, you can get you'll get some different results um, from pencil to pencil. But the more you use them, the more you'll become familiar with that, and you'll kind of be able to predict how many more layers of a soft pencil you'll be able to get on top before you use that hard lead to brush that out or smooth that area out. And depending on what paper, surface that you're working on, it might be different. Um, one time to the next. Okay. So this is the reason why a lot of times I'm removing little tiny things that looks just like pigment is building up in a particular area, and that's the reason, because it might have a little tiny clump in one area, and I don't want that because it's going to affect some of the pencil layers on top that I go on top with. Now, this particular pencil, if I compare it, Herculaneum Red, the one I'm using right now, if I compare it to that violet pink, let me make sure this is violet. Oh, this was hibiscus pink. Okay, so there's not much difference in those two. I get them confused all the time. But if I compare those two, this Herculaneum Red and hibiscus pink, the Herculaneum Red is very hard. The lead is very, very hard compared to that pencil. So they're not all the same. They're not all created equal. And this could be one that I use to, you know, I hate to use the word burnish because then somebody thinks I'm talking about just bearing down with all your might so that you flatten everything out, but press a little bit harder, in order to affect the layers underneath. This would work using this Herculaneum red, and because it's so hard. And other times, depending on the layers underneath, it may not work. And so you would want to go in there with your Polychromos pencil, some harder lead pencil like that. Now, if you can see this, let me zoom in. Maybe it'll be easier to see. But already you can start to see, it's flattening out a little bit of what I've put down, and you can see some inconsistencies a little bit where I may have gotten a little careless, or I didn't remove some of the areas that started to build up on me. So if I'm careful, I can go back into this area and just add a little more of that. I think that was red probably that was picking up right there. Add a little bit more right there. Just kind of repair that area, if you will, and then go back over it with my Herculaneum red. And it creates a more smooth appearance. Okay, so later on, I know I'm going to use Polychromos in this area. And if I hadn't done that right now, I might create a problem later when I use my Polychromos pencil, and it will magnify little inconsistencies like that, little areas where I've got a clump of some pigment from underneath, Okay. Well, it's an interesting idea, Oksana. I've thought about that before. I'm afraid if I did that, if I said this is the pencil line, that I don't know. I'll think more about it, but I'm afraid I would say that as soon as I can't use something, or I say these are the ones I use, that I would start to rebel against my own list and start to want to use something that I don't have in that list. You know what I mean? But yeah, I have thought about that. There are some I'm starting to gravitate towards more than others. I noticed some inconsistency right up there. I don't know if you guys saw that or not. Especially when I zoomed in here, I could see it a little easier. I want to make sure I just get that to look a little more smooth than what it was. Now, we've got something interesting happening up here where I've got a little bit of a shadow that I need to make sure that I depict. I put in there, because this area of the anatomy, while this bottom eyelid moves back up, what happens is there is there's a cast shadow that happens right underneath this. There's a form shadow, and then there's a little bit of a cast shadow that happens. And I think it's best just to get that in there, at least started in here right now, you know. So it's going to be darker in one spot right over here. And that's the form shadow right in there, the little bit of a wrinkle right under there. But then there's also a cast shadow right here. It starts to develop. Oh, let's see. Oksana, did you say let's see. Oh, Shiny, you said that's what Bonnie did. Oh, yeah. I've known of other artists that have done that. Yeah, they're probably a little more organized than I am as far as their palette is concerned. I don't know. I am starting to gravitate towards the same pencils over and over, though, I noticed. Okay, so that's probably enough of that shadow um, that I was seeing in that area. Okay. Yeah, it's a good idea, Harry. I like that idea. I like the idea of a starter kind of set or a go-to. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Okay, I want to wrap this dark shadow around here. And I'm just going to use just a little tiny bit. I'm not going to just flood this area. I just want to use a little bit of this dark indigo. And then right up here in the nostril. Then fade away from that spot. I want to make sure, though, that the darkest area stays over here in the corner. All right. That's already starting to flatten out just a little bit, flatten out some of the layers underneath. I can push this down. Push it back up as well. I'll start right here, move my way down. Do that again. Okay. Same thing up here. Move my way down. Yeah, pencil's getting dull. I just sharpen it. Come back in here to the areas that it's skipping over. I just very carefully add some horizontal lines here, some strokes in here to get those areas that it was starting to skip. That's the danger of using a dull pencil, is you're just skimming the surface of the tooth. You're not going down into the valleys of the tooth. You're just hitting the tops, the peaks of the mountains, if you will. Peaks of those hills. Even with subsequent layers, you're doing the same thing. You're just magnifying it over and over again. You're repeating the same thing over and over. Okay. Move that over just a little bit. All right. I'll clean that area up just a little tiny bit. Or not. I'll get a little few things here. It's not too bad though. I did okay right there. Okay. So it kind of got away from the eyes a little bit, and that's okay. Went down into this area. Spent a little more time on that shadow than what I thought I was going to, but sometimes that happens. So um, usually isn't a problem. Let me do one more thing before we go. I want to make sure I've got a nice rounded look up here to the eyes. Okay, and if I come in there and put my Herculaneum red right inside here, on both sides. Blend some of that red that I have on there, that anthraquinone red. Then it will start to give me that little ridge on the bottom of the eyelid. And then I can come in here with my Polychromos ivory color and just put a little bit of a lighter value right in here to make sure I maintain that lighter area right there. Kind of seals it in for me. So that's a nice thing to do pretty early on. Okay, we're going to go ahead and stop there today, guys. Thanks for joining. Really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun. And we will do this again next week. Same time, same place. All right. Take care. Have a good day.